You were a Democrat in 1972, and
Yeah.
you say you haven't been a member of a party since then.
That's right.
Why? Why'd you switch to no party?
Oh, McGovern. When I saw what happened to the Democrats under McGovern, I voted, heaven help us, for McGovern in the primaries in 1972 simply because I was so sick of the Vietnam War. But the more I saw of McGovern and the people around McGovern, the more I realized what a disaster it would be to have this man president. I was never a Nixon fan, and so in 1972 I didn't vote at all. Or in 76 for that matter.
How does Richard Nixon look now in retrospect?
A lot better.
Why?
Well, you compare him with, say, Clinton. Nixon was going to, was threatened with impeachment. He quit. He spared the country. He wasn't going to fight it. Even more so if you go back to 1960 when there was an extremely close race between Nixon and, no, 60? Yes, Nixon and Kennedy. And there were people saying, there was all kinds of voter fraud in Chicago. I mean, voter fraud in Chicago is not a new idea. And they were saying he should challenge it. He refused to challenge it. The country should not be put through that. The stuff that went on in Florida in 2000, that kind of stuff, he spared us all of that.
What was your feeling about Gerald Ford?
I like President Ford. I think Ronald Reagan was better. But the thing that I guess the one thing that really made me upset with President Ford was pardoning Richard Nixon. I was driving my car on the highway when I heard the news, and I immediately got off the highway because I don't like to drive when I'm angry. And until I calmed down and went again, because of course what it said was there are people out there who don't, who are essentially above the law. And I think that is the worst thing you can do. Yes, the country would have, I don't know how much the country would have been put through an impeachment of Nixon, because he didn't have that many fans at that point. But the idea that some people can commit these crimes, because I suspect that had Nixon been convicted and served a little jail time, I suspect that Clinton might have watched this step a lot more carefully.
Which president offered you the Federal Trade Commissioner's job?
President Ford.
What were the circumstances?
They had a vacancy. It was 1976, and they offered it to me, and I agreed to take it on condition that if there's any opposition that arises, they let me know. I'll withdraw because I don't have time to play Washington games. And I kept calling there and asking the guy at the White House who's handling this, is there any, I don't hear anything, what's going on? And he said, oh, no, it's just taking time. And eventually I was in Washington, so I went up to the Hill and talked to the staffer of this committee that handled this. And he said, we've gone over your record with a fine-tooth comb. We can find nothing to object to. And therefore, we're just not going to hold hearings. Because this is an election year, we expect our guy is going to be elected, and he'll appoint his own man. What burned me was that he said, and I said, did you tell the White House this? He said, we told the White House this months ago. And I went back to the guy at the White House, and I said, I just talked to this fellow on the Hill, and either he's lying or you're lying. Which is it? And he started hemming and hawing, and I turned and walked out. I sent them a one-line withdrawal letter from the hotel on hotel stationery, and that was the end of it.
Are you sad you never served in government?
No. My gosh, no.
Why?
Stuff like this is one reason. That, Harry Truman said, if you want a friend in Washington, get a dog. And anyone who's asked my opinion about going to Washington and serving in government, I can't think of anyone I said that they should do it. Some people have credited me with having some influence with Clarence Thomas. I obviously don't, because I told him when he was at the EEOC and he was looking around what he's going to do next, I said, get out of Washington and stay out of Washington. So he wouldn't even be where it is if he'd listened to me.
What are your expectations about the possibility of him being nominated to be Chief Justice?
No idea. I mean, I know less about Washington politics than I know about anything else.
But I guess maybe a better question is, what would happen if he were nominated, in your opinion?
Oh, there would be the usual kind of cheap shot reruns at the confirmation hearings. I think he'd probably get confirmed, and it would be great for the court. I'm not sure it would be great for him or not.
Let's quickly retrace your steps in life. How many places have you lived?
Oh my gosh, I sure must run into a dozen or two.
Started where?
Born in Gastonia, North Carolina. a little town about 15 miles from Charlotte, which were my earliest memories are of Charlotte. Moved up to Harlem when I was 8 years old. Went down to Washington in 1950, worked as a GS2 clerk for the government, came back to New York, was drafted into the Marine Corps, a couple of years there. Off back to Washington, went to Howard University at night on the GI Bill while I was working for the government today. And then decided I wasn't getting anywhere intellectually. I thought this is not going to make it here. And so I started writing away to places, and the only place that would give me any money was Harvard. So it was my fallback place. And I really appreciated the way the frankness they had, because they wrote to me first that you should not withdraw from where you are, because chances are you will not be admitted. And which was, you know, I was a 24-year-old high school dropout who had a B- average at a mediocre college. And so, you know, but we'll wait to see what the test results were. And a couple of days before I took the SATs, Columbia sent me their rejection. And I took the SATs, I did very well on it. And so the letter came back and it said, I'm not sure we're doing you a favor, because by then the scholarship money was going anyway. But you're admitted. And in those days you couldn't give us transfer student a scholarship. And so they would simply lend me some money, and I then would have to come up with the rest of it to cover that first year, betting everything that I would do well enough the first year that there would be a second year. And as I look back on it now, I know so much more about the situation and the odds. I realized that was an incredible gamble.
And did you ever get your high school diploma?
Never. And so when I've taught at some of these expensive places like Cornell and Amherst, I've sometimes told the students, do you realize your parents are paying all this money for you to be taught by a dropout?
You got your undergraduate degree from Harvard in what?
Economics.
You got your master's degree from?
Columbia in economics.
And you got your PhD?
In economics from the University of Chicago.
And at Chicago, Milton Friedman was your advisor?
Yes.
What did he teach you that you still hold on to today?
Well, I guess everything, but he taught price theory. And, but I guess it really, what he taught was rigorous methods of thinking. And that's a legacy. That's something I appreciated at the time, and more so as time has gone on. I remember one of the questions he asked on an exam was, define marginal revenue. Now that's a question you would ask in Economics 1, you see. And so I thought, well, nobody got full credit for the answer. I was lucky to be one of the few that got partial credit, because there are all kinds of sloppy ways of defining marginal revenue, which then leads you into all kinds of fallacies. And so you learn, no, you define it the way it ought to be, and that way you avoid a whole mess of stuff that you don't want to get into.
You, in your Random Thoughts columns again, share some of your personal thoughts on things other than politics. And one of them is, I know you're a photographer, that you say Ansel Adams, that no one has yet taken better pictures than he did.
Yes.
Why do you say that, and what about your own photography?
Well, my point was that all the huge advances in technology really don't make up for the talent that you either have or don't have. And so right now, my favorite picture that I've ever taken was taken with a speed graphic, the last one of which was manufactured 30-some years ago. I took the picture last June in Yosemite, and it's on my website if you want to take a look. It's half dome. But here is this camera that hasn't been made in 30 years. And it's not the camera, it's not the equipment, it's the photographer.
How much do you do with your website, and who maintains it for you?
My assistant. I have no idea what it costs, how it's done, or anything. I simply turn it over to her.